I like how my dogs weren't in the office all morning until I hit record, and now they're all like looking at me like, "Hi, how can we make noise while you're talking on the podcast? How can we?"
It's what the animals do.
It's like they were all just slumbering downstairs, being awesome and quiet and not bothering a thing until I needed them to stay that way, and then they were just like, "Nope, we're awake now. What are you doing? Hi, Dad."
What's going on in here?
Then what can we chew on?
Can we jingle? Can we jingle for you with our callers? Welcome back to another episode of the Southern Fried Geekery, everyone. Jingling noises aside, I'm excited about this episode because you know what? It's episode, I want to say 139. We'll call it 139, tentatively.
Matt, you're in charge of our episode number. What number is it?
139.
See,
look at that.
I did good. Matt's proud of me. I made Papa Matt proud. But I am, making folks proud while I am Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
Matt Trogdon.
And I'm Craig Lance.
And I am, I'm excited because it's another beautiful Sunday morning and I get to talk comics with my boos, my besties, my brethren, which is always fun. How's everybody doing this morning? Let's just weekly check in. You guys doing okay?
Yeah, doing okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Fantastic.
August has not been my favorite month in the past 5 years, but
Yeah. 2020 has not been my favorite year of the past 5 years.
Exactly. On other news, and my Padres are doing good, so I'm happy about that. So
My Padres.
they are my Padres.
I just cracks
when
me
they're
up.
losing, they're somebody else's Padres.
Yeah, it's just funny how sports fans do stuff like that. My Razorbacks, my Padres.
So a funny story that goes along with that is the longtime Padres broadcaster, radio announcer, Ted Leitner, has been in hot water his entire career over that. He's always said, my Padres when they're winning and your Padres when they're losing. And he does it to taunt the fans, of course. But it's become a thing now and it's just accepted. But for years he got shit. Probably the first 10 years he was in San Diego, they just gave him shit over that. Because it was just a slam on the fans. Just trolling.
He's definitely calling them my Padres right now. Didn't they just do something ridiculously stupid, like do 4 grand slams in 4 games?
4 grand slams in 4 games, and then they hit a 5th one last night. That is 6 grand slams they now have in 9 days.
Jesus.
No team has ever hit 7 in a month, and they've hit 6 in 9 days.
Well, they still got a few days.
So what's a grand slam?
Bases loaded and hit a home run.
Got it.
You're gonna have to explain what a base is to Matt. He's never made it past second.
Obviously, that's where you plant yourself to shoot your enemies.
Yes, that is exactly right, Matt.
Him and Ben Shapiro are both waiting around second.
That was
So,
Well, this is not the Ben Shapiro Power Hour. Very much the opposite.
nor does Padres fan talk.
But we'll take Padres fan. Like that makes you happy, which makes Matt and I happy. Like we like it when you're happy. That's why we don't talk about the Cowboys because I'm never happy with them. Even though that's my team and I love them. But we are a comics podcast. We are not a sports podcast, although sports do slip in there because, there's a lot of overlap with the fandom and the sports there. But before we talk to comics, last night, I guess all day yesterday, actually, something kind of cool happened. Some neatness happened in the comics world that, at least from my perspective, I really appreciated because, COVID kind of ruined everything about everything this year. And, not the least of which was the ability to go to conventions, to hang out, to sit in the same room and record a podcast, just anything. So the fine folks at DC, after, having the incredibly shitty month that they have had, they provided us with at least some amount of entertainment yesterday by doing the DC Fandome thing. Did you guys get a chance to watch any of this?
I just watched some clips.
Yeah, I watched highlights. I did not actually watch any of the event itself.
Yeah, same. I didn't have a chance to, I was just busy all day yesterday. I didn't have the time to sit in front of a computer. I did, like a lot of our friends were. Like if you some of our different social groups and things. There was a lot of people who just were able to have a good Saturday where they took everything off and just powered through and watched it, which is awesome. I'm glad they got to do that.
I got to give DC credit for doing this in the middle of all of this, putting on this big event and getting people hyped while everything else is going on. So
no, for sure. And especially, like I said, the last, was it last Saturday or last Sunday before last, where we were talking about the, what the internet has came to call the DC bloodbath. I mean, so not only was it good for DC or good for us as fans of comics and pop culture, it was kind of good optics for DC, and especially considering they actually pulled it off.
Yeah.
And it was successful, but that's it was the right time for everybody, I think, for this to happen. But what we got out of this, besides all just the coolness and general elevation of our collective moods, was several trailers for films, several television news bits that came out, some video game stuff. So did you guys have a favorite thing that dropped yesterday that we hadn't seen before?
Oh, for me, by far and away, it was the Batman trailer.
Oh, yeah, same here. That was amazing. I
mean, don't get me wrong. There was a lot of good stuff, and I'm excited about a lot of what I saw yesterday. But that Batman trailer, whew.
Yeah.
And, a big screw you to all the people that were against Robert Pattinson playing Bruce Wayne.
Oh, those people shut up fast, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
They got real quiet real quick.
Yeah, they did, and rightfully so. Which, I mean, if you've seen him in anything other than, of course, the vampire movies he did, the guy's a good actor. You knew he was going to pull this off.
Oh, for sure. And he does the dark and broody thing really well. And that's what struck me the most. I was not worried about how he would look in the bat suit, because I mean, let's face it, you don't need a broad acting range to pull off, dude in a muscle outfit with only part of your face showing. But the scenes where he was acting as Bruce Wayne, like, standing in front of just the carnage that was being
the dude wearing the to the Batman sign on top of his wired body that's about to explode in the middle of downtown Gotham.
It looks and dude, we're getting a really dark and twisted Riddler by all appearances, which
is what the Riddler should be.
Yeah, in my opinion. Let's not get it twisted. I laughed at the Jim Carrey Riddler when it came out.
I did not.
5.
I did not laugh.
But see, that's the thing. That came out when I was like 5 or 7 or some shit like that. Like it was.
Oh, okay.
It was great that's fair for me as a kid. And there was a certain amount of chemistry that him and Tommy Lee Jones had, just the good cop, bad cop routine. But I'm gonna.
You were the first person I've ever said that heard say anything positive about that movie.
And a follow-up question: when's the last time you watched it?
It's been a long time. Like I'm not making the claim that it's a good movie at all. Like I'm not making that claim. I'm saying that as a child, I found that
I got you.
That lighthearted version. And
that's fair. Riddler. That's probably who it was made for.
Yeah, I like.
It
Jim
definitely
Carrey.
Was made for 5-year-olds.
Right. and at the time I was one. And Jim Carrey is a funny dude to a lot of people. But I'm going to enjoy seeing this darker version of him, because he is a terrorist. Like on some level, even the Joker that was played by Heath, there was a little bit of the Riddler DNA there of what I would have liked to have seen. So I'm glad that they are taking some of that. And they're applying it to this version of the Riddler, and it looks just twisted as shit. I don't understand. I don't get how anybody could look at this trailer and still poo-poo it the way that they were doing before.
All I know is Batman kicked the crap out of that dude in the clown makeup.
Oh God, that was so wonderful.
When he stops and he looks at him and then punches him 3 more times.
Breaks his arm. I think he breaks his arm and then continues to pummel him into the ground. Obviously setting an example for the crowd.
Yeah, for the other 10 Joker face people.
Yeah, the crowd.
There's
so much about that trailer that I was just all about. But I think overall, what I'm the most excited about is that it certainly looks like we are going to have a detective story here.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, this could be, I mean, the aesthetics of it look amazing. Jeffrey Wright's delivery, just a little bit you saw, you're like, dude, man, God, dude could read a phone book and make it compelling. And I love the fact that we're going to get a what it certainly looks like as part of this Riddler dynamic. We are going to have a real investigation going,
which is what it should be. Batman versus the Riddler should be a detective story.
Yep.
Yeah, as opposed to the one we were just talking about.
Yeah. So, and then the Batmobile looked fantastic. Man, there are so many positives from that.
You mean
trailer.
It actually looked like a Batmobile?
It didn't look like a tank. I'll give you that.
Like, yeah, I'm
it looked like a sports car.
And I've been missing that. And I realize it's an aesthetic choice, and I'm just purely speaking for my own tastes and likes and dislikes. I don't like the crawler jumper thing, and I don't like that it's worked its way into the comics even either.
Yeah.
I miss the old.
I prefer the sports car.
Yeah, I do too. Like I think that and a little bit is the, and I'm going to step on my own toes here, because I think nostalgia is largely holding back pop culture, but a little bit is nostalgia, and that's the reason I like it. So I'm excited to see them going back to more of a car instead of a military equipment surplus bridge jumper thing.
And I'm glad we're going back to a young Batman. No offense to Ben Affleck, but it's going to be nice to see Batman in his prime.
In his early, and of course, the impression you get is this is him like right when he starts hitting the streets, and he's going through the learning process of the whole thing. So I'm excited to see how they treat this as like how he's learning how to do this.
It's very much from the vibe of the trailer feels like a Year Zero,
kind of
like Snyder's Year Zero, where you had Batman versus Riddler and Batman just getting his feet wet. So it'll be interesting. I'm super excited for it.
I wasn't, we've talked about this before. I wasn't a fan of the Joker movie by and large, but I did think that part of the tone of that film they got right. And as I was watching the trailer, I think that they are taking the good parts about the tone of that film, being the surreal, the cerebral aspect of it, the violence of it, the anxiety of it, and they're going to apply it with hopefully good content, which is what the Joker was missing. So, I don't know, maybe that's just me, but as far as origin stories go, I feel like these two things could take place in the same little pocket universe, but I'm definitely going to be more inclined to like this, I think.
If you're going to do Gotham, you may as well have Batman in it. That's just what it needs. So
this was as good as it was. It was not my favorite thing that came out of the fandom, though. I absolutely loved, and it's going, like I said, tonally different, storytelling wise is different. I absolutely loved the Wonder Woman 1984 trailer that dropped.
Sure.
I'm giddy about this movie. It had a lighter feel to it. It had more of a fun feel to it. This is going to be a film I can watch and kind of feel good. It felt like George Perez telling a story, and it looked like Alice Ross painting a story. It had that kind of vibe to it. And Wonder Woman's that's my girl. If as far as a pinnacle of DC characters, for me, it's going to always be Wonder Woman, or at least since I've read a shit ton more Wonder Woman than anything else. Besides arguably Batman. But I'm really excited about this. To see the actual transformation of Barbara is going to be incredibly cool. And hopefully it doesn't look like Cats.
I don't know. They showed a scene of her as Cheetah, and it looked pretty good to me.
I've watched it on my phone several times, and I don't know if it's the lighting on my phones, but the scenes where she's actually Cheetah, it's kind of dark and murky, and I can't really make out exactly what she looks like. So I'm wondering if I watched it on a larger screen, if it would be more detail oriented. But I also wonder if they didn't do that on purpose, and they're going to really hit you with it hard when you see it.
Well, surely they know their biggest complaint has been the CGI of their villains, so hopefully they've worked on fixing that. And Wonder Woman should have a different tone than Batman.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's been DC's biggest problem is they've tried to give every movie they make a Batman tone, and it just doesn't work. Make them tonal to those characters.
No,
and I think they're doing that with Wonder Woman, and it looks fun. I mean, the scene where she's swinging around on her lasso from
when she grabs
Thunderbolt
the
to Thunderbolt, or lightning bolt to lightning bolt, is amazing.
I'm not gonna lie, I clapped real loud, and Roger looked at me like I was real dumb. But no,
I mean, she's taking an awfully big chance that there's going to be another lightning bolt to catch her. But hey, whatever it takes.
All of a sudden, the clouds just go away, and she falls, and she's like, "Well, crap."
We're all out of lightning bolt. Sorry.
No, so yeah, that's the as far as films go, I think that's the one I'm most excited to see out of what we saw come out of the fandom. Do we want to talk about? And I'm not going to, this is going to be one of those things I say to each their own on, but we also got the first good look at the Snyder Cut. How did you guys feel about that?
I mean, it's a movie I've already seen. I'll watch it. But it's nothing I'm super excited about.
How did I feel about it? I guess I felt indifferent.
Yeah, ambivalent. Right?
It was like it was, I'm interested to see what exactly we could have had versus what we got, but not because I think it'll be better. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I guess that's just, curiosity is just, I'm not going into it expecting to like it. I'm going into it just expecting to see, okay, well, this is what we could have had. We didn't,
Just from the trailer, And again, it's a teaser trailer, and you can't. I'm a big fan of take those things with a grain of salt because I mean, hell, if you go back to the Avengers movies, you would have thought that you were getting the Hulk in Wakanda, and that's not what you got, right? And the outfits and stuff like that. So they purposely put things in trailers that are meant to misdirect you a little bit and lead to a different set of expectations. That being said, I didn't really see anything in this that makes me think that the story is going to be different, as much as they're just going to add a little bit more context to things, because it's supposed to be 4 hours. But by and large, it just looked like they added more video game footage. I'm watching the trailer, and a lot of it was actually in the original film. It looks like a Snyder video game movie, and that's what a lot of his movies look like. And if you don't like that aesthetic, I don't know that this is going to be a lot different for you.
Yeah, I'm assuming the CGI dark side is going to be pretty bad based on what I've seen so far, based on my experience in the DCU. I'm expecting the dark side character is going to look like just terrible. I'm assuming that's I can't help but believe that's got to be part of the motivation to take him out of the movie altogether. I know they didn't want to have just the DC version of Thanos as well, but yeah, like I said, my expectations are just mediocre at best.
Yeah, I'm not expecting much.
And I don't want to.
Will I watch it? Yes, but that's about all I can say about it.
See, I'll watch it eventually. I'm not going to go out of my way to watch. I mean, number one, who has 4 hours to sit down and just really watch a movie that they've kind of already seen before? That's a lot of time to dedicate.
Well, I'll tell you who. Lord of the Rings fans do it all the time.
That's true.
Absolutely.
That's a valid point. Okay, you're not wrong. But
to watch a bad movie that you've already seen is the question.
I also hope we're wrong. Does that make sense? I hope that we're wrong, and that this does produce something that is quality, and that
you want to know why you shouldn't think that. You want to know why I don't think that, and neither should you. If we're wrong, and this is a good movie. That just adds power to the chance that Zack Snyder will get back into the DCU. So you need to perish those thoughts from your brain and hope this sucks, so that it'll be like, we can wipe our hands of this and know that the DCU will do the same.
You're not wrong.
And there's also the group of people that have been hollering for it are not particularly people that I want to be right.
Yeah. And maybe that's why, like, I look at it the way I do, is that I genuinely, maybe that's some bias, is that I don't like the fact that we are giving credence to like the toxic fan culture. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily like the big wigs at DC, like, oh, well, there's this weird sect of fans who have a hashtag and we need to give them what they want because they're being mean and we don't want to be people to be mean. Like, I don't think that's actually why they're putting this out. I think they're putting this out because they do see an opportunity to make money off of it. But at the end of the day, like you said, I don't like Snyder films. I don't think that he's a good filmmaker. He makes things that are just essentially music videos, which including this trailer. By the way, can we please, dear God, for the love of everything,
I know what you're going to say.
Never use another Leonard Cohen, like that Leonard Cohen song in a film trailer ever again.
Yep. I thought when it started, I thought, okay, this is one of those bootleg BS quote movie clips on YouTube, because I'm like, they're not going to use this song again. Almost turned it off. I'm like, oh, this is one of those clickbait trailers. Yeah,
boy, they fooled you, didn't they?
Yeah, I'm like, they know they're not going to use this song again. I'm like, oh God, it was painful. Sitting through the trailer was painful.
And I love that song. I love that song so much. I just don't love it the way they use it for anything. Like, they only use it when you're actually watching Leonard Cohen on YouTube. Like, that's the only time you need to use that song. Well, video game wise, we had some cool stuff. Oh, before we get too far away, there was something else that really piqued my interest, but it wasn't necessarily a trailer as much as it was a teaser. But did you guys watch the Black Adam stop motion comic teaser thing?
I did. I liked it. I mean, it's interesting. I love that they had, Dwayne Johnson in there doing the voiceover.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited for that movie. I can't wait to actually see a real trailer for it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Give me more of that though. Like, I thought it would, like, the stop motion comic aspect of it, like the way it was produced. I thought that was great. Like, like for a 30 I think like 30, what was it, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, just for that little amount of time. Like, don't give me those shots that they do, like they do with a lot of films, where they kind of just give you the best parts of the movie, and in a lot of ways they spoil the movie in certain ways. Like, that's why a lot of people, myself included, don't watch anything after like the first major trailer that dropped, because we don't want to see the best parts of the film, which they are always doing. The stop motion comic aspect of it, where you're not going to get that. Like, I'll sit through a trailer that's a stop motion comic. Like, if you know what film you're making, then make a little 1 minute 30-second stop motion comic promotional thing out of it. I'll click on that before I ever click on a live footage spoiler trailer.
Okay.
Yeah, I got the same response to that.
I mean, I get it. I mean, but I would rather see footage from the movie. Now, I only watch usually the first trailer or something, because I don't want to be spoiled.
Yeah. I'll watch the first official trailer, and there's a lot of times I'll skip the second one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
a lot of times.
The one that comes out close to the movie, I won't watch. But hey, for what they were showing us, basically they're just letting us know the Black Adam movie is still coming, and that was pretty dope.
How about the fact that Hawkman and Dr. Fate are going to be in it? Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Just, I mean, standing straight up, just massive nerd erection at that. Just like, it was just like, oh my, like like, just all of it was awesome. And
before we move on to the games,
mm-hmm.
I thought that the one place that, like, the weirdest announcement that came out of this whole thing is that Ezra Miller is still attached to the Flash movie.
Yeah. I don't like that.
I don't like it at all. Not to go on, trying to keep things positive, but I'm not interested in a Flash movie or any movie with Ezra Miller in it until we get closure to what happened. And
I don't like him as the Flash, particularly.
Both. I don't like him as a human or as the Flash. So
yeah. Well, yeah. On top of the, what you're referencing, I don't know, why does he run the way he does as the Flash? What the hell is his problem? What's with him swinging his arms in that weird freaking way, like he's half swimming or something. I'm like, what is
Yeah,
wrong?
it's kind of weird. Yeah.
Who coached him? Who did or did not coach him on this?
I mean,
why don't we just get the kid from the show? He's good.
That's what they should have done. Like Grant Gustin is amazing as Barry, not just as the Flash, but like I look at Ezra Miller, like regardless of the baggage that he brings, I'm like, oh no, you're Bart. That's your Impulse. That's who you are. You're not Wally. You're not Barry. You're Bart. What are you doing here? Kind of the same. And again, I'm just not interested in that version of the character. And for better or worse, I think it was, again, because that version of the character is tainted by a movie that I didn't particularly care for, so that doesn't help it. But I just don't necessarily think he's a good actor. Like, I don't, I haven't ever seen anything with him in it that I'm like, huh, he really shined right now. This was his moment. Like, that hasn't happened.
I've never seen him in anything other than
me either.
I'm the DC movies, so.
And it just sucks too because he is a gay man in real life. I'm like, yeah, we break down barriers, we finally get into a good spot, and you're an asshole. Thanks.
Well, I mean, people's sexuality doesn't determine whether they're good people or not.
No, 100%.
And
it sucks. It sucks when so many good queer actors are constantly passed over for roles that they're perfect for, and then a queer actor gets put in a role and all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, he's actually a terrible person. And it's just like, God damn it. It's like, you could have stayed home that day.
I guess I just thought we were all going to forget what happened because 2020's been like 5 years long.
Maybe, but it's also one of those things that we do only get, and I'm not giving him any leeway particularly, but we only get what's reported, and we do live in a world that loves, especially when it comes to celebrity media, they love embellishing things. There's been some mixed stories that came out of what happened. So essentially what happened, if I'm not mistaken, is he was at a bar in some foreign country and some lady was yelling, like they got into it or something, and he slapped her or choked her or did something, which is
choked her. Yeah.
Terrible. Don't do that. Absolutely terrible. Don't put your hands on somebody. But there were also some other reports came out that she was calling him derogatory slurs, which again, don't hit people. But also, I'm a gay dude, and so if somebody randomly walks up to me in a bar and starts dropping F-bombs, and I'm not talking about the word fuck, I'm going to be inclined to come back with some heat. Again, I'm not saying that is absolutely what happened. Those were some counter reports that came out of it. So I don't know. I mean, again, I'm kind of surprised he's still connected to it just in general because we don't know what happened. It's just...
There certainly has never been any follow-up since April on it. Now, granted, the world is worried about much bigger things than what this dude did in Sweden back in April, but yeah.
I mean, are they though? Alyssa Milano was trending. So
I mean, is it like 1989 we have the cast of
oh god, I wish it was 1989.
Still arguing, still bickering.
Oh, speaking of 1989, and just the 80s in general, and things that look like they're incredibly fueled by cocaine, the Suicide Squad trailer. What did you guys think about James Gunn's Suicide Squad?
I did not see a trailer for it. I just saw the, kind of them talking and some behind-the-scenes footage. I mean, I'm okay with it. I mean, I'll watch it.
There were three things that came out. That they had a thing that highlighted James Gunn because they're still trying to really refocus on him. They had a thing that just went through the massive list of characters. And I should have had a screenshot pulled up, but I don't. But the characters that you get in this are insane. They went for deep cuts. I mean, they've got fucking Polka Dot Man for some reason. And then there was a little bit of a trailer to it. It was a Tuesday trailer. But yeah, there was so much stuff that came out that you had to kind of find it.
Gotcha.
I'm intrigued. Look, I mean, James Gunn did give us Guardians of the Galaxy. He took these characters that nobody knew and nobody cared about for so long, for forever, and he made them. Arguably today, nobody, everybody knows who Groot is. Everybody knows who Starman is or Star-Lord is, and before that, nobody did. So, we'll see if he can do that with some of these side characters. But I also, I think it's meant to. There are some characters that are going to be throwaway characters. because it's the Suicide Squad. And, we'll see how he handles Harley. That's also a big question, especially even on this podcast. Like, we all have differing opinions on Margot Robbie's Harley. So it's not going to be, obviously it's not going to be for everybody, but you're giving me John Cena as absolutely a joke character is amazing. Like,
oh, for sure.
Like I'm gonna, it's gonna be fun. I think.
Out of Suicide Squad stuff that came out, I'm much more interested in the Suicide Squad game.
Well, before we move away from, before we move on to the game, I had to keep backing up on the Suicide Squad movie trailer to pause on the one shot where it shows, allegedly all the team members, and then on the far left, King Shark's silhouette is over there. I was like, oh, sweet.
Well,
yeah,
so, and they show him in one of the things, I forget which one, but it's like it's an anime, obviously a CGI King Shark, but like he's looking mean in one, and then all of a sudden he smiles and he looks like this little cutesy shark. It's ridiculous, and on some level, I think this movie's meant to be ridiculous in a good way.
On every level.
Yeah, it's Suicide Squad. Of course, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, but you can have,
and it's a James Gunn Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I can't imagine right now a better director to pull this movie off.
I agree.
This guy, this is like, he's tailor made for this kind of story. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. For a lot of reasons.
Well, let's talk about the games, because we've mentioned them a few times. So there's a Suicide Squad game coming out, and there's also, and I think maybe I missed something. I think there was only 2 games that really made big news: the Gotham Knights game and the Suicide Squad game. Correct, or am I wrong about that?
That's correct.
Okay. You all are going to be way more interested in these things than I am. So, drop it on us. Tell us what it is.
Well, the Gotham Knights game is starts with the death of Bruce Wayne, and he's turning Gotham over to the Bat family. And by Bat family, I mean Nightwing, Red Hood, Batgirl, and one of the Robins. I'm assuming it's Tim Drake, based on equipment and his age and so forth. It looks like a typical kind of Arkham Knights game to me, to be honest. It looks good. I'll probably play it, but did you guys see the trailer?
Yeah, I did. I loved it. I thought it looked really good.
The visuals look really good, right?
Oh, man, the cityscape looked amazing. Holy crap, man. The cityscape looked incredible. The gameplay looks killer. Yeah. My favorite part is, the little clip you saw of Batgirl going up against Mr. Freeze. It looks really good.
Robin throwing his equipment, I forget what it was. It looked like batons maybe he was throwing, and they were.
That's Nightwing.
No, I know, but it was Robin throwing them. I know, so that's what confused me, because it's usually Nightwing throwing batons, right? Well, or am I getting it convoluted in my head?
Well, Tim Drake is he's known to have a staff, and so I think that could also be a thing. Like, Tim Drake used that as well, which adds credence to the fact that it was Tim. But and I also think that the his Robin logo looks like the Red Robin logo.
Yeah.
Because the Red Robin logo was always a little bit different than the logo that they used for any of the other Robins, and so it looks like that to me. But you can't, it's a reproduction of a reproduction. You can't really tell.
It's definitely in a time period that I would find interesting in Gotham, the post Bruce Wayne era, where he leaves it to the kids that he trained to take over. I think that's an interesting take, and what would be an interesting time in Gotham. So I'm definitely down for that game.
I think it has it has the potential to be every much as of a hit as the Spider-Man game was from 2018, 2019. And I was watching some of the gameplay that they showed in that trailer, and it looks a lot like that. And the graphics on the Spider-Man game were amazing. So if that's what they're going to reproduce, I'll probably end up picking it up and playing it. Just because it looks, I want to know what the storyline is there, other than just Batman dies and they take over, but also why they So they left out characters. They left out like Batwoman. I would have liked to have seen Batwoman, and she may be in the game. Maybe they're just slow playing that. I don't think a lot of people who aren't comics fans know who Damian Wayne is. So, it doesn't surprise me they left that out. But I would like to see some tangential characters like Cassandra.
Well, those guys are, all of them that you're talking about are probably part of the storyline, but not necessarily playable characters.
Yes. Historically in these games, the cast of characters is huge.
Yeah.
So it would not surprise me in the least if we see Batwoman especially. But yeah, there's all these games, man, they take full advantage of the whole Gotham City universe. And that's what I've liked. I mean, I've bought and played every single one of these Arkham games. Yeah. And they're all great. They're fantastic games.
Yeah, when I said it reminds me of a typical Arkham game, that's not a bad thing.
No, for sure. Yeah. Those were fun. Was Alfred in the trailer at all?
No.
That's interesting.
Again, I think all of these characters are going to be part of the storyline. I think they emphasized the 4 characters that are going to be playable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming that you are either going to be able to choose to play it through as one of the characters, or depending on the part of the storyline, you're going to be playing different characters at different times.
Do we want to talk about the in the trailer at the end of it, they did something a little bit different. And they gave you almost a after credit scene for the trailer to let you know who some of the big bad guys were in this.
I don't guess I caught that.
It's if I'm not wrong, it's Court of Owls.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, it looks really cool. Like the little poem is being read at the end of it as they're showing like all these coffins, and it's at the end of it, it's the Talon will get you, and it shows the 2 eyes. So
yeah, it was cool.
So the big bad will probably be the Talon,
mm-hmm.
and it'll be Court of Owls story. That I'm totally good with that.
Yeah, I think it's cool, and I'm always down to see something inspired by Greg Capullo. That's going to make me happy. So
don't forget, Scott Snyder. I mean, they co-created that.
They did. I'm always going to be excited to see something inspired by Greg Capullo
and Scott Snyder. Don't forget,
always inspired by Greg Capullo.
Scott Snyder.
What was that other thing that we wanted to talk about? The other game.
Craig, remember when Scott Snyder wrote the Court of Owls, and we wouldn't have this part of this game if it wasn't for Scott Snyder's contribution to the Bat universe? That was cool. That was a good storyline.
Hey,
one of the better ones in recent history, actually.
No, especially when you consider the amount of Batman he's worked, one of the only good ones.
Oh man,
always inspired to see stuff inspired by Greg Capullo.
Who worked with Scott Snyder? Game? Yeah. No, Scott Snyder didn't work on that one.
So the Suicide Squad game isn't coming out till 2022. So all we really got was a trailer for it, which was a lot of fun. It looks beautiful. I'm interested in playing it. It looks like it's going to be a fun game. And anytime, the Suicide Squad goes up against the Justice League, that should be interesting. So, yeah, I'm, less to talk about on that than you had on Gotham Knights for sure.
Well, man, King Shark's design was a little off-putting for me personally. But
really?
Oh man, I didn't like the way he was designed on there.
Again, the game's not coming out for 2 years, so I assume that these aren't final designs.
Well, they'd have to radically change it then because he's got that little head. I mean, that's the thing. King, great white sharks have. I mean, the head is the biggest part of the body, and his is like. It just looked really off-putting to me. But maybe again, we're not going to get that for 2 years, over a year and a half. So I'm like, whatever. That's so far in the future. I didn't give it much thought, frankly. But for what it was, it looked good.
Yeah, the story, the little clip they showed, I thought looked good. So
it looked busy. It looked very busy.
To me, it's a cut scene. Is all they showed us. They took one of the cut scenes and showed it to us.
Yeah, pretty much.
People love Rockstar games. Because that's who's putting this out. I'm pretty sure, right?
It's Rocksteady.
Yeah.
So it's not Rockstar.
Oh, Rockstar. Yeah, I mean, that shows you the extent to which I know video games.
If it were Rockstar, this game would be getting all kinds of press already. Mm-hmm. Because you're talking about the people that do Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption. Yeah, please have them give me a Suicide Squad game.
What was up with in that? The only thing I guess we're all picking nits, but Deadshot looked more like Firefly. Like he looked like a mix between Cyborg and Firefly in that.
I didn't like that aesthetic either.
Yeah, I wasn't crazy.
Looked like he was wearing Iron Man armor, for Christ's sake. It's like, oh God.
Yeah.
I mean,
we'll see.
Could very well be just awesome. Like I said, I'm not gonna poo-poo on it. We'll see what it is.
Well, we're talking about something that's a year and a half at least out. I'd figure summer of 2022. Probably to coincide with the movie would be my guess. When's the movie supposed to come out?
It's next year.
Is it? Okay. You sure it didn't get everything? Did it get pushed because of the pandemic?
Well, that was the thing. Even with the and Raj pointed this out to me with the Batman thing. It has it says $?0?1. So like there are things that are going to be pushed, and other people were commenting on this online. Is that a lot of these film trailers flat out said in theaters only on certain in theaters only 2021.
Well, in Wonder Woman, they actually said 2020.
Yeah, and that's a bit presumptuous to me, I think. And I'm wondering if that's going to get walked back and backed up, because I don't know that we're going to be in a place where we can open up movie theaters. And hey, look, on some level, theaters are already open. Like, I know some local theaters are doing this thing where you can rent out you bring your own movie, you rent out the theater, they make you socially distant, but you can still have birthday parties and stuff. And
they're showing older movies and things like that where they're not expecting, full crowds into the theaters.
But you're going to get massive crowds for this, for any of these films. They're going to be fairly large, bring people out to the theaters thing, especially after people have been cooped up for a year. I just think that, hell, we might actually get the video games before we get some of these films if they're sticking to that theaters only thing.
Yeah.
So,
yep. It just depends on what happens with this virus.
I'm ready for the virus to fuck off.
I've been ready for about 6 months now.
Yeah, me and Miss Corona are not getting along. Well, was there anything out of and we didn't cover? I think there was a little bit of comics news, but it just didn't make big headlines. And like I said, I didn't get a chance to sit down and really pour through all of it.
Yeah.
Were there any other things out of Fandome that we really want to talk about? I mean, any other points that you guys were like, oh, that's just awesome?
Well, the only other thing is they did say that the Sandman Netflix show is still coming. Mm-hmm. It's just that the pandemic has stopped production on it for now, but they're still planning on doing it. So, I'm good with that.
Well, I think the other big thing is the fact that we're going to get a Batman story where Batman's going to be an African American.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
I missed that one.
Yeah, that's happening. Apparently it was originally planned to be part of the main Batman storyline. This was a Dan DiDio initiative. And after he was forced out, that's been altered to where the current plans are that the African-American Batman is going to be a short miniseries that will happen within the current Batman title storyline.
Gotcha.
But and it's supposed to be Lucius Fox's son.
Mm-hmm.
That's supposed to take up the mantle as Batman in this very small run. So apparently Dan DiDio had this thought. He was going to take the DC universe. And from the sounds of it, it sounds like a lot like what Marvel tried to do is just make new, younger versions of all the existing characters. And why he would think that would work after the abysmal failure that Marvel experienced from it. There again, maybe that's why he's not doing his, in that position anymore. But that was scrapped. But this African American, Lucius Fox's son,
Yeah, this was going to be part of
still
the
going to happen, but so yeah, we'll see how they handle it. If they, and surely they're not going to make the mistake to think of, well, we're going to pull a Batman Beyond type thing, and Bruce Wayne's just going to be in the cave, and he's going to have a new avatar out there. I mean, I'll just tell you straight up, it's going to be extremely hard to keep me on board with a Batman comic that does that, because same reason that I couldn't stay on board with any of the new Marvel iterations kind of doing the same thing. It's, it's not about some guy putting on the bat suit. It's about Bruce Wayne. It's not about some other guy that turns green and angry. It's about Bruce Banner. You've got decades worth of history with these characters. You think you can just slap a new, same title on a new character? It's not going to carry the same weight.
I'm not going to argue that point.
No, I mean, are you not a fan of? So you don't like the Batman Beyond stuff?
It's not that I don't know. So I like the Batman Beyond stuff, but I like it as it existing in its own thing, not taking over, not the main title making that transition. If the Batman title as it exists today, James Tinney in the fourth writing, switches over to, like, if it were to switch over to the Batman Beyond stuff, there is no way I would stay on board with that book.
I guess for me, it would depend on what story they're telling. Like, I think of things like Spider-Man 2099. Like, I love Miguel O'Hara, and there's been, some stories where Miguel O'Hara comes into the modern universe, and he has his own little bit. So, I mean, it would depend on what story is being told. And like you said, this is a mini series, and we're talking about a comics universe that has like 52 plus universes. So if there's some type of crossover where another universe's version of Bruce Wayne is a young black man, I'm about it. I'm.
But that's not always, no. It's not going to make Bruce. It's not just going to turn Bruce Wayne black. It's going to be a totally new person donning the bat suit.
Oh, and I'm fine with that too. Like, I mean, especially like you said, it's a miniseries, so that they're going to pull out of it. At some point they're going to give you back the Bruce Wayne that you at least know to some extent. I mean, he may be changed a little bit, but look, I'm always going to be okay with people taking chances, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't work. If not, they can always reset, like we've seen other people do, like we've seen Marvel do, we've seen DC do when things don't work, and you reset it, and all of a sudden you've got the character that you know and love because the books that they made that character out of still exist. So and if you don't like it, just drop off, like you said, drop off of it and check in later. But I'm getting to the point in my life where I'm cool with experimentation. I'm cool with seeing what you want to do to change characters up, to see what sticks and what doesn't. If it's a bad story, then I just don't have to read it, and I can forget it exists, and it'll be like the umpteen other bad stories that are stuck in bags and boards in my attic that I don't care about, that are right next to the stories I do know and love, that I get the hardcovers on and put them in my library downstairs. So, like I said, you just have to see what story's being told, and how long it's going to last. I mean, like I said, these things rarely last because people all like nostalgia drives this shit. So I'm fine with them dipping into something new for a little bit and then coming back to it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give it a shot. I'll definitely read it, but I think that Matt's onto something there that, we tune into these characters because we know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean you can't play with that character. You can't have new things happening with that character, and you should have new things happening with that character.
Well, and it's, I'll make the comparison of She-Hulk. Really like the character of She-Hulk, but that's because we still have Bruce Banner as the Hulk. I'm just talking about, them making these radical switches and just dumping these established characters that I've got so much history with and invested in, and they expect me to just automatically be just as vested in somebody with the same, code name or whatever. It's like they don't get it. It's like,
and that's why
you got to do the work.
That automatic vesting of the automatic vesting you're talking about, that's where I say the story has to be compelling. But there are a lot of people who they don't care about the story. They see the changes being made, and all of a sudden they're disinterested. And that's fine too. If that's your bag and you only read it for that character, that's cool. And I think a lot of people, like I've said it before, there are a lot of people who love Batman more than they love comics. There are a lot of people who read the Batman comic and don't actually care about the DC universe. They care about Batman. And if that's your thing, like I'm using the universal you, not talking directly to you, Matt. Like that's fine. I can guarantee you there's 100,000 other stories out there that feature that same character that people haven't read and haven't dipped into. There's always stuff there. I'm just, like I said, if the story is compelling, I don't mind the changes, especially because like they're rarely permanent. Like I can't think of anything, maybe Captain Marvel, Marvel that is permanent. Like that's one of the only ones in comics history that I can think of that was a significant adjust and shift and locking in a different character to a legacy thing. And that's about it. Like they always, almost always universally revert to the being of the character that we know and love, even if there are small changes to that thing. Like,
there's a whole lot of DC Golden Age characters that would disagree with you.
Well, you're right about that. No, I mean, Flash, Green
Lantern, yeah.
But I mean, Hal's back, like, so.
Yeah, but is Alan Scott back?
Yeah, he's in.
No, he's not.
Yeah, he's not in any books right now.
He's supposed to be in that new Justice Society book that's coming back.
Supposed to.
So I don't know if that's out yet or not. But
it is not.
Like I said, it's very, very, and the golden age of comics, especially in DC, was, way different than what the Silver Age was. Like you're talking about two completely different things that they didn't connect with until later on in the Silver Age. So, like the Justice Society went back in time and made that bridge. They made it from the future bridging past to bring those characters in, and that was what made it really cool. So, and brought those figures into the modern universe as we know it.
And I'm somewhere in the middle on this between you two guys. I mean, I will buy it and read it, and if I like the story, I'll enjoy it. If not, I'll move on to something else.
Well, speaking of moving on to something else, you want to talk about some comics?
Yep, sure.
You want to talk about some comics that introduce a new character and change the way that they are for the future? So before we get into this, I guess we should say, as always, we're going to spoil some stuff because there's no way to really talk about the content of a book within detail, within the way that it deserves, without giving some credence to the plot and uncovering some things that will be a surprise to you if you have not read the book. So check the little show notes, look at the time markers. If you haven't read something and you want to and you don't want spoilers, skip ahead or push pause and come back later. And that's the way that you do that. It's not hard. It's not science. Lots of people can do it. So we all got together this week and we decided to read a Marvel comic. I think it's been a little bit since we've roundtabled a Marvel comic. A new one came out, and it's one of those legacy characters that we were just kind of talking about. It's somebody who that we now know, that we first got a neat look at in around about 1992. And that book is none other than Maestro #1. Wonderfully written by the great Peter David, with art by Dale Keown and Herman Peralta and colors by Jesus Abertoff and Jason Keith. Should mention that Adriana Marr did the lettering. So before we dive too deep on this, what did you guys think about this?
I really dug it.
Dug it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I don't have the same ties to the Maestro that you two do, but I thought it was a very good book, and I enjoyed it, and I will continue to read it.
What do you mean you don't have the same ties? Let's get your shortcomings and faults right out on the table.
I mean, Future Imperfect was okay to me. It's not, I know you guys love it, and I'm not going to say it's not bad. It's just not, for me, my go-to book. If I'm going to read an old Hulk book, I'm going to read the end.
That's fair. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I love Future Imperfect because I love George Perez. like to me, the Future Imperfect, yeah, sure, Maestro, awesome, set up this new future, great, Wasteland, woohoo, yeah, Peter David, fun stuff, always generally a good writer. But my thing with Future Imperfect is just the art and the way it looks. It's like it's George Perez giving me a visual feast. So it's not even necessarily content of that story.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Future Imperfect. It's just it's not my favorite Hulk story, and that's fair, I think.
Yeah, that's
Matt may disagree, but
it's not my favorite. I really appreciate the Maestro character.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fair.
It's
right. It's what it is.
It's another version of it was the first time we got to see that version of the Hulk, which was cool. And Craig's not wrong. I think as far as the story content goes, I like the art in Future Imperfect because it's George Perez much more than I like the art done by Dale Keown in the end. But I like the story of the end better. I think that was like if I had to go back and pick either one of those and actually read it, it would probably be the end. Just for me.
For me as well, but that doesn't mean that Future Imperfect's not good and it doesn't have its merits.
No, for sure. Like these things build on each other. That's the nostalgia
That's
and the
right.
continuity of it. And they're written an entire decade apart. You think of what changes in a decade. And again, we're now more than a decade past the end because it is, almost 18 years. So the decade can legally go buy cigarettes in some states compared to the book that we now hold in our hands. So this story kind of, it doesn't pick up where anything leaves off. This is actually a brand new kind of an inception, an origin story to the Maestro character, to the, as the cover says, the origin of the Hulk's greatest foe, which I call bullshit on, himself. Because the Hulk's greatest foe is the Abomination. Always. But we get to see this story open up with kind of where we left off with Peter David and Dale Keown. Those were the two figures who worked on Hulk the End. They gave us that story, and Dale Keown, I thought it was great that they got him to write the opener of this story, because it looks like it could be segued into that. It looks like it could be a part of a larger tome. The Hulk opens up with a fight scene, as in all good Hulk stories should do, and Peter David knows that. He's the master of riding the Jade Giant, and he is beating the ever-loving hell out of a Sentinel. He's just breaking this thing down, and he's having a blast doing it. It's funny that he's doing this, and the first words of the book is, life is good. And so as the camera kind of zooms out, he's standing in this field of wreckage, like all these Sentinels are just broken down, and the Avengers are standing there. And this is the Avengers. It's of course Cap and Thor, but also we've got Wolverine sitting there from his stint in the Avengers, and that's what they're kind of channeling. And they're all just like, dude, Hulk, you're like a one-man team. Like they're giving Hulk all these accolades that he's always wanted, and in large part has never gotten the respect that he seeks as a member of the team. That's been an Avengers standpoint for a long time, that Bruce especially wants to be on even ground with these people, but the Hulk won't let him. Well, he's fixing that in this in this scene. And at that point, like I said, what could possibly go wrong with this? He starts to figure out what all is happening around him. He's thinking about his life as it exists in this scene, and Betty's there, and he's got kids. His sons are doing great. He's living the happy family life. Like literally everything is. He's living his best life. He's living his dream. Which I think at that point, at the reader, you start realizing, oh, well, the Hulk just doesn't get to live his dream. There's something going on with this story. This is not right. And then Hulk starts to realize that too. So he's sitting down with Betty and his kids at dinner. And Betty's just kind of going through why everything is awesome. And one of the kids walks up. And by the way, you've got one son named Thaddeus, and the other son is named Rick, which I think is great. one of them is green all the time, and then one of them is a little white kid all the time. I thought that was a really cool artistic choice. But the green one, yeah, he breaks in as his mom is telling about why everything is awesome, and he's like, well, no, like everything's not awesome, and I don't have to do what you say. And she's like, well, why do you think you don't have to do what I say? And he says, because you're dead, Mom, which is weird, right? And this takes Hulk back. This takes Bruce, like he's shocked by this. He's like, Betty, what's this kid talking about? What do you mean you're dead? What's going on? Everything kind of starts falling apart at that point. And he starts having a panic attack, I think is the best way you can put it. He's having an emotional reaction to this. And Captain America walks in and, pats him on the shoulder and is like, hey, like you're fine. You're okay. We need to calm down. Let's get back to just these good feelings. Let's sit down and eat some meatloaf with the family and have this family moment. And the Hulk's not having it. He's realizing that something is off here. Something is not what it seems. And the world around him starts to glitch. Like he opens up a door and he walks in and he's in this kind of square room that looks like it's, there's hardware and hard wires everywhere. And it's almost like he's seeing behind the veil for just a second, but it's a glitch, right? And as all glitches do, it reverts back to showing you what you're supposed to see. And he's standing there in the midst of the Avengers in his house. Where did these folks come from? Like it was, all of a sudden Captain America showed up earlier, but, Cap is prone to walking inside and doing what he wants. But now the whole team is here. I mean, you've got Black Widow, you've got Cap, you've got Thor, you've got Wanda, Ant-Man, Vision, Wolvie is there. The whole team has showed up. And this has kind of put him on point, right? Like he's like, okay, like, if you're a Hulk fan, you know that when the Avengers face off against the Hulk, things don't tend to go well. And it kind of puts him on edge. And he's just like, no, like things are wrong. I don't believe any of you. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm done. I'm out. And Thor reaches up to like grab him. He's like, no, don't leave. And in a very, at least for me, poignant and wonderful moment, Hulk just punches the shit out of Thor and then knocks him on his butt. Like sends the little Thunder God, that little 12-volt battery that he is, flying way back. To which the Avengers respond. They all head out and they're trying to get him. And Hulk does the thunderclap, which knocks everybody back except for Vision, because Vision can turn intangible. And as he and Vision square off,
I want to interrupt for a second, Caleb, about him punching Thor. Uh-huh. So did you see that as a punch? Because I saw that as a backhand.
Oh, no, it was definitely a backhanded slap. Yeah, no. There was.
So I just want to say I put more value in that backhanding of Thor than a punching of Thor. If you want to take note of that,
you two are just trying to taunt me.
If you want to just take note of that, Craig.
It was.
I just feel like you guys are trying to taunt me. That's all. I'm just remaining quiet. You guys keep on with your taunts. It's okay.
If you look at the way Dale Keown closed it, it was a backhand, but it was a closed-fisted backhand. So it was like it was both. It was both a backhand and a punch, because he's definitely got his knuckles clenched. But at the end of the day, a whole lot of disrespect in that, and I was here for it. But as he envisioned,
that seems to be a theme over at Marvel right now with Thor, so understandable.
Yeah, I mean, it's just get the same version of the character forever. You got to disrespect it because it's boring. Anyway, back to this. I love you, Craig. Please don't hate me. As he and Vision kind of square off for a minute, Vision reaches inside Hulk's head and is going to turn tangible. Like that's a thing that Vision does that typically just puts people on their knees, but it doesn't work. In fact, it wakes Hulk up. And Hulk is in a scene very reminiscent to Weapon X. I think there's supposed to be some visual throwback to that. Is plugged up to all these wires and all of these monitors and all kinds of equipment. And he's in a laboratory. And he is, he's got a beard. He's got part of his head is shaved, but he's got long hair. He looks like a young version of the character that we're going to know to become the Maestro. But all of these alarms are going off. He starts ripping all these monitors off of him, and a woman walks up, and she's got a kid with her, and she's just like, "Hey, calm down. Like let's just talk about this." And the kid looks like the version of the kid that was one of his sons. It was Rick. And this really, again, this is a very Bruce Banner and the Hulk do not like not knowing what's happening at any given time. No matter if we're talking about the Hulk as a character in any of the stories, if they put him in a situation to where they don't have an understanding of what's happening, if it's confusing, that leads to violence. It's kind of like I think of dementia patients. When they get confused, that's when they can be at their most destructive. And that's kind of what happens here. He needs to know what's going on. And so he starts clearing these folks out of the way. He knocks this woman on her butt. He picks up the kid, and the kid starts fighting back and runs to the kid's mom. And just you hit my mommy. Mommy, are you okay? By the way, this child is entirely too old to be using the word mommy as much as he does. We got to talk about that. But as he starts to just be done with this and leave, a door opens, and all of these little AIM soldiers, kind of a futuresque, high-tech version of the AIM soldiers, pour in. And they've got their blasters pulled, and they're warning him. And Hulk's like, "Yeah, go ahead and do it." And they're like, "No, seriously, we warned you. We won't warn you again." He's like, "No, I kind of feel like you're going to warn me again. Matter of fact, I bet money that you're going to warn me again." And you know what they do, Matt? Do you know what they do?
Hell yeah, they warn him again. I loved that line, by the way. That was a really badass moment. "Oh, I think you'll warn me again." I was like, "Oh, sweet."
Oh yeah, it was fantastic. And they do. They they warn him again, and he proceeds to lay waste. I mean, he beats the hell out of them, and he starts punching his way down, like literally down through this building. And he gets to a bunker, and as he's looking around, he starts seeing all these other people. I mean, in these kind of glass stasis jars. Vapor from the UFOs is there. Abomination's hooked up, which why anybody would try to keep the Abomination alive is beyond me. Like, that just seems like a bad idea. And more AIM soldiers pour through as he's like getting his bearings and stuff, and they start shooting him. And these little blasters they have are not they're not without their merit. They sting him a little bit, but they're not going to put him down, right? So he starts to charge them, and all of a sudden just runs into something that's not there, like literally a force field. And it puts him back, and a beam comes out of nowhere and just knocks him way back. Like, this thing has got power. It doesn't quite blow a hole through him, but it definitely leaves a mark. And as he looks around to see what just hit him, and because he's kind of surprised at this, he sees MODOK. Old man MODOK, a gray and grizzled MODOK, a MODOK that does not look like the MODOK that we've seen before. It kind of looks like Bernie Sanders' head with little legs. He's like gray, and he's got some male pattern baldness happening. But laser beams and force fields. And MODOK, who is the mental organism designed only for killing, is there, and he really has only hit Hulk to calm Hulk down, which is, again, redundant, but probably a bad idea. But in this case, it works. And so he introduces himself. He's like, "Hey, I'm MODOK." And, in what is a funny line to me, and it took me a minute to really understand what was happening. He's like, MODOK, MOD, okay, machine organized, or mental organism designed only for killing. And, Bruce turned around and goes, "Hulk has unusually large kidneys." And I'm just like, okay, that didn't quite land the way that the humor side of it needed to, but it was there. And essentially what happens after a little bit.
Well, the great thing about that line is that he acknowledged in the book that it wasn't a funny joke.
He has to explain the joke, which, it took me a second to find the humor there, but it was there. But MODOK essentially starts explaining what's happening, and he's like, "Dude, everything is gone. Your family's gone. The world as you know it is gone. Your friends are gone." And Hulk is just like, "Okay, what happened? Was it Dr. Doom, Ultron?" And he was like, "No, it was them." And he's like, "Them who? Who is them?" He's like, your leaders, the government, all the people who are in charge of keeping humanity safe. Them. They started World War III. There was a terrorist group, and they fired off a dirty bomb, and they managed to blame it on everybody else, and no one trusted the media. Nobody trusted what was going on, and just missiles started to fly. A little bit after that, another terrorist group, a group known as the Black Scythe, raised up, and essentially these were kind of a eco cult that decided to just that humanity is what is wrong with the world, and they were actually pushing for the distinction of mankind. They started setting off their own little bits of bioterrorism to, like, their main goal was suicide, but it was planetary suicide, including themselves. they just wanted to eradicate humans from the planet, and it made the world unlivable. And of course, Hulk is unhappy to hear all of this, but he also doesn't quite believe it. He knows who MODOK is. He's not necessarily inclined to not think MODOK is lying. And, he also kind of feels like MODOK is probably trying to use him for some nefarious purpose. And so he kind of is just like, no, I need to go check this out for myself. So he kind of walks outside. And unfortunately, what he realizes is MODOK is not lying. MODOK is absolutely telling the truth. The world is gone. The world is a skeleton. Like humanity, civilization as we know it is just wreckage. It's carnage. And he's got to but Hulk is still here. He has to figure out where to go from here. As it turns out, this lair, MODOK, whatever you want to call it, is underneath Hollywood. It's underneath California. And Hulk kind of bounces over to the Hollywood sign and just proceeds to dismantle it. And he makes it say Hulk. And, MODOK is like, well, where do you go from here? What do you have planned? And he's like, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the future brings, which was a nod to Future Imperfect, which I thought was really cool. And we'll go on from there. We will be to continued. And what I feel like is going to be an exploration of the gamma wasteland or the nuclear wasteland. It's the world that gave us, like you said, Future Imperfect. It gave us The End. It gave us Old Man Logan. That Inception gave us a lot of things, and I'm curious to see him explore it in its early days, to see where that goes. I think Herman Peralta was a great choice, personally, to tell this part of the story. Like, you got Keown giving us the kind of bright and perfect Hulk and the happy Hulk in a way. And then you get Herman Peralta, who's got a much grimier style, a much more painterly style, like loose lines, and a lot more shadow, a lot more texture in a lot of ways, to give us the Hulk that is in the present, which is the future version of the Hulk. I think his art is fantastic. I think the colors by Jesus Bertoff really played well for that really dirty, nuked out, everything is wrong, dark planet. And then Jason Keith's brighter colors, his brighter palette, served the beginning of the story well. All in all, as a Hulk fan, as somebody who loves the Hulk, I have no complaints about this book. In theory, I don't know that I need a origin story for Maestro. That's just me. Like, I kind of like the idea of not necessarily knowing, like, because that was the great thing about, and I'm curious to know Matt's opinion on this especially, but with Future Imperfect, the great thing about that story is we don't know what happened. It was almost like you fill in your own blank. It could literally be anything. It asked you as the reader to theorize and come up with a story. I don't necessarily know that I need an origin story, but I'm going to keep reading this because I'm a Hulk completist and fanatic, but and I'm curious to see what they come up with, but I don't know that I necessarily needed it. But if anybody's got to do it, it's got to be Peter David, right?
Yeah. I mean, for sure, it's got to be Peter David. Go ahead, Matt. I know you got stuff to add.
Yeah, I mean, so origin stories, boy, that's a hot topic. And I am all over the place on origin stories. I guess I have to say I like them when they're really done well. The problem is that seems to be far and few in between. Growing up, Wolverine's origin being so mysterious, not his origin so much as his backstory is probably a better way to say that.
Right.
And then we got God knows how many backstories of Wolverine to where the whole aesthetic is just, as far as I feel about it, it's been just ruined. I just try to forget about almost all of those backstories. So I don't know. I'm really torn on origin stories for these kind of things. I definitely see value and appreciate not having them like in this character of Maestro. But it's Peter David, so I'm going into this thing with high levels of optimism for this origin story. And just hopefully I'm happy with the result, assuming that I will be. But I do have a little bit of cautious optimism with origin stories, to your point. But also, as far as the overall quality of the book, I liked Peralta's artwork much better than Keown's. Keown's pages felt stiff to me. Everybody it was overall just stiff. As you compare to the Peralta's work, everything seemed a lot more fluid and expressive. So I really liked his pages a lot better than Keown's. Not to say Keown's weren't good. I mean, they were good, just stiff. That's the only thing I would say about it.
One of my favorite moments in this book was when he's finally realizing, that he's been played all this time. Mm-hmm. And Black Widow's trying to get him to calm down, and she starts, with what she says in the movie.
Uh-huh. Yeah, the sun's getting real low.
Yeah, it cracks me up. I mean, I laughed out loud at that moment. So
it was really strange to me that Wolverine was there. Did that really jump out to anybody else?
To me? Yeah.
Well, why was he there?
But they've been tied together for so long, I guess.
Well, I'm not saying that was like a dumb choice. I'm saying, why did Peter David have him there? There's a reason they had him there.
I think that was to also clue in the reader that something was not that there weren't enough clues already, but something was truly amiss, because it's not necessarily even that Wolverine was there, because Wolverine is an Avenger. He's been an Avenger before, but it was also who wasn't there. Wolverine took the place of Iron Man as far as the Avengers lineup goes. You didn't have your core three, including the Hulk, who was an original member of the Avengers, but you had Captain America. Oh, no, you didn't have Captain America. You had Iron Man, you had Hulk, you had Ant-Man, you had Wasp, and you did have Captain America very quickly in that when they pulled him out of the ice. But with this, you don't. And I think that was also what was it served, at least to me, to really drive home the fact that something is off. Like this isn't your actual team, because why would Iron Man not be there? But I do think that there is some credence to the historical link between Wolverine and Hulk. Like, I think that was, I think Craig's right on that. So I think it was a moment that did work on multiple levels to really drive home the fact that there was some weirdness going on. And I see, I'm looking back through the pages now, and I see what you mean about it feeling stiff. I've got a lot of those old Keown issues, and I've never felt like Keown's art was stiff. I don't know what he's been doing lately. I just wonder maybe if he was a little bit out of practice, but there were some things that I noticed with that too. Like, some pages were extremely detailed, and then some pages just weren't. Like, some of the facial expressions were missing things. Like, I'm looking back at that page that Craig was just referencing, where she drops the sun's getting real low line from the movies, and it kind of blends that in. Like, everybody's face has an expression and has some type of texture to it, except for Wanda's. And then Wanda shows up again later on in the book, also with no expression to her face, which makes me wonder why Dale Keown hates Wanda. Because he just doesn't draw her well at all in that. But also,
unless it has to do with the fact of just what was going on at the time.
I was just kind of thinking that maybe that was purposeful, and that this is a fake world that we're seeing. And I can't say for sure, but I mean, certainly taking a step back and intent, you can't judge a piece of art necessarily by the intent. You can only judge it by what you get out of it. And with the content of the story, with the way that plot's working, the end effect, it really does drive home that this is fake. Like, this is fake world. And maybe that was intentional, maybe not, but the stiffness of it does kind of get the point across in that. And I can't say that was a choice that he made, or maybe, like I said, just the way he drew it, which was not objectively great. Like, if this was outside of in its own story and this was the actual story, I would not be happy with it. But cloaked on the idea that this is a hologram, on some level I can give it a pass, maybe. I don't know.
I just attributed it to what, fighters call ring rust. He just has, because what pencilers will tell you is if you don't draw on a regular basis, you will lose a step in what you deliver. And I just attribute it to that. I mean, he's not been on a regular working schedule for God knows how long.
Yeah.
So I just attribute it to ring rust.
I do like his Thor's face, though, on the page where Hulk is just disrespecting the 12-volt battery god. He, like, his facial expression, his work.
Damn you. The 12-volt battery god,
huh? Keown's vision was great. So I thought that was good. All in all, like I said, I'm curious to see what they do with this book. Like I said, I love the Hulk. I'm always going to love the Hulk. We'll see. We'll see where they go. I have faith in Peter David. He's written some amazing things. I'll be surprised if Keown shows back up again in the subsequent issues, or if this is not just all going to be Herman Peralta. But I would love it if what they were doing, and this is just me speculating on things that I don't actually think are going to happen, but would make me incredibly happy, is if they gave us major artists from Hulk history doing little bits in each book. So if they gave us in the next issue, they gave us George Perez drawing Hulk, that would make me happy, just even for a few pages.
I'm down for it as long as it fits the narrative like it did in this book.
Right. Yeah.
To do it just to do it isn't a big deal to me, but if it fits the narrative, for damn sure do it.
So like I said, I don't expect to see that.
I really enjoyed this book as somebody that doesn't love Future Imperfect. It's not, again, without rehatching everything, I enjoyed this book a whole lot. I really enjoyed kind of having the backstory to how he got there. So, you're talking about the origin story. In this case, I'm kind of all for it. Especially seeing, what they did with it. That, hey, even though all the superheroes were trying to fix everything, the world still fucked itself.
I'm curious if he's going to go through and collect all the trophies. So one of the things from Future Imperfect that you see Maestro's trophy room, which includes things like the broken shield and the adamantium skeleton and stuff like that. And again, part of the origin is you just assume that Maestro killed everybody himself and took those things. You see Silver Surfer's board in there. I'm curious if what we're going to find out now is that he didn't do all that himself. Is in his wanderings through the wasteland, he just collected all those things. There's a ton of places they can go. And again, I'm speculating on things that we have no idea and may not come to pass. But I guess
that would be badass. And I would actually like to see that we find out that he kind of lost it when the world did kind of fuck itself. And maybe lost control of being, himself and went after some of these superheroes because they weren't able to stop this. That would be an interesting take on it.
I mean, the options are endless, and there's some good ideas.
They really are.
So I'm curious to see, do we know how many issues this is going to be?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't see that indicated anywhere. Mm-mm.
I didn't either. In fact, when it was solicited, I almost thought it was a one-shot, but we know it's not now. So,
yeah.
So we'll see.
I thought it was a one-shot when it was solicited as well, so I'm kind of excited.
It's on my pull list. I'm definitely going to be on for the full ride, and we'll have to maybe revisit this on the last issue and roundtable the last issue to see what we thought.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all right. Well, let's jump over to Matt. He's been quiet for a little bit, and I don't like it when Matt's quiet, because when Matt's quiet, that means he's plotting something, and that's dangerous. So, Matt, what did you read this week?
So the book I'm going to talk about, I finished this week, is the comic book story of professional wrestling. I mentioned that in last week's show. The subtitle of this book's kind of funny. The hardcore, high-flying, no-holds-barred history of the one true sport. So put that in your baseball and smoke it. This is by...
What is with the slamming Craig stuff today?
Aubrey Sitterson, and this is also art by Chris Marino. You've been making bad choices. I mean, I think this is what this show is all about.
Is that
so? This is a historical book. It's about the history of professional wrestling. Very well done. The narrative is very easy to read. It's not completely linear. He makes small, sometimes just one-page interruptions in the linear telling of the history, just to drop basically random facts in. Touches on, and this is not just about pro wrestling in the United States. This is about pro wrestling, as it occurred in the major, I guess you would call it the most influential markets throughout the world: Japan, Mexico, England. But the part I'm going to touch on is what I enjoyed the most is about the early days of wrestling. He talks about wrestling as it existed in ancient Greece, Asia, and European wrestling. But he really gets into the details when he starts talking about wrestling in colonial America. And it's recorded that, during colonial America, disputes between individuals many times were settled with fighting. Either that they called, the two people that were having a dispute would come to a decision. Are we going to have a, quote, fair fight, which was bare knuckle boxing,
fisticuffs,
or are we going to have a, quote, rough and tumble fight? Rough and tumble was anything goes. Anything goes means anything goes. Tearing of ears, biting of lips, noses, groin damage, literally anything goes. They would come together and make the decision, which of these are we going to do? Rough and tumble fighting became later referred to as gouging. And it was called gouging because most of the time people won by gouging the other person's eye out. And but after the during the post-Civil War era, that's when you really saw professional wrestling start to happen as a form of entertainment. And this is where the traveling carnival, quote, strength contest happened. And that was, you get a guy, put him on a stage, and the carnival barker would call up people from the audience. Hey, if you can last 5 minutes with our strongman, you win a cash prize. And a lot of times you do this and there's nobody in the crowd going to volunteer to take on the strongman. In any given crowd, nobody's going to be like, yeah, I'll give it a shot, for obvious reasons. So they'd plant somebody in the crowd and they would put on this show. And that's really the origins of, quote, wrestling becoming a predetermined match or predetermined show. It goes all the way back to that. So he talks about that a little bit, and how that was really done. Then he gets into a character named Martin the Farmer Lewis. So this was the first wrestler to really make a name for himself across the country. He was a legitimate wrestler. He studied what was called in England catch wrestling. He became a master in submissions via what they call hooks. A hook in wrestling is when you contort somebody's body to the point to where it's so painful they tap out before you can permanently, or not permanently necessarily, but damage their bones or tendons, or really cause some damage. This guy, he had a gimmick where he could hang himself by the neck and whistle Yankee Doodle Dandy. He did that on his tours when he was wrestling. He also was the first person who was recorded to teach wrestling. You could send him some money in the mail and he would mail you some wrestling lessons pamphlets, or you could take a class of his live. And he trained a handful of men who would go on to really spread this professional wrestling thing across the country. He's really the most influential person in American history to really make this go widespread. And over the decades, the sport slowly morphed into predetermined matches, because having a legitimate wrestling match can literally go on for hours. And a lot of times it did. Well, you know, the amount of money you're going to make with one of those is going to be limited because there's not a whole lot of people willing to sit and watch a wrestling match for hours on end. But if it's a much shorter match and there's a lot of there's a lot of dramatic pins and body tosses and so on, and it lasts 20 minutes, you can get a hell of a lot more tickets sold for that. So that's how this slowly morphed into what it's more known today. But what's really interesting is that in these very early days, on up through the 60s and 70s, there were still there were more legitimate wrestlers than I guess you would just say performers. The legitimate wrestlers are known as shooters. A shooter is a guy, when he gets in the ring, he knows how to wrestle. He can submit you. And, you know, most of the time, these guys are who ran the territories. And from a business standpoint, they needed these guys because let's say you give the belt to a wrestler, and then you later come back to him and say, okay, it's time for somebody else to win the belt. You've had the belt long enough to keep this interesting. We need to move the belt to another personality. If that guy holding the belt says, no, I'm not doing that. Well, if you've got a legitimate wrestler in your business that can say, you're going to turn over the belt, or when we get into the ring, I'm going to hook you and break your leg, or I'm going to hook you and break your arm, that guy's going to be more inclined to cooperate. And that's how these wrestlers were kept in line. Eventually that changed to where, you know, as the years went on and more of these legitimate wrestlers were weeded out of the business, it became, okay, you're going to be the champion, but you've got to put down a $20,000 deposit. So there again, that'd be a motivation for that person to cooperate when it was time for that belt to change hands later. But within these, and they were called the shooters, you know, the shooter wrestlers kept the business going as it should. But it was interesting, you know, the guys known that were hooks, that could throw the hooks in, or hook wrestlers, those guys were legitimately feared. When you got in the ring with what was known as a hook wrestler, people were scared because, you know, that guy can destroy you without any given notice. You don't know if you get in the ring with that guy, if he's got a grudge against you that you don't know about, or for political reasons, he just doesn't like you and doesn't want you in the business anymore. He can legitimately end you right there. And that's always been really interesting to me. You know, the skill of shoot wrestling is something that's always been really interesting to me. It was never available to me where I grew up, where I definitely would have taken some legitimate wrestling lessons. It's just funny to me how it's available everywhere now. I mean, the smallest schools in the state of Arkansas, they all have wrestling. And they should have always had wrestling because it's like the cheapest sport you can have next to running.
I mean, I was going to say that the gear's not real expensive for it. Why don't they have? And most of them have it for their gym classes, anyways.
Yeah, it was stupid to never have it, but because it's so cheap, and and kids are lined up to do this kind of thing. I mean, a certain kind of kid anyway, like me. But anyway, a different subject. So, the history of it from that aspect to me was the most interesting. Is just where it started and how it morphed into this become such a huge business. But the book's a lot of fun to look at. The art's very entertaining. It's a very very cartoony type art. So it's just fun to look at. But he goes into, obviously, he spends most of the time talking about American professional wrestling, talks about a lot of the wrestlers that, we all know about generally because of the TV era when wrestling started hitting TV in the 70s going up until current day. So I really enjoy this. He doesn't spend a lot of time talking about any one particular character, just how these different characters impacted the industry. So I've been looking for this book for a long time. I finally found it on eBay for a really good price. It's a really popular book. And so finding it online, I mean, people are trying to get you to pay $50 or more for this book if it's a first print. So, I was just patient until I found it at a really good price. I got a first print at a really good price. And
nice.
I'm really glad that I finally did.
Sitterson's a good writer and a good historian. He actually has a line of these things that are the comic book history of, I forget what podcast, but I was listening to him on another podcast that he was talking about it not too long ago.
I've read, of course, I've also got the last comic book history book that I read is the comic book history of beer. And that just occurred to me when you said that. I don't know if he wrote that, the comic book history of beer. Nope, he did not write that. That was
different writer.
Yeah, different writer. I just went and looked.
I too like to put on spandex and wrestle with guys on the ground. It's a big part of my life. Big part. Ends differently. It ends happier, you might say.
That's a amount of perspective, I would say. Ends happier.
Yeah, just depends on who's on top. But so
nice. I'd be interested in reading that book at some point.
Yeah, I'll loan it to you. It's fun.
Okay.
I really enjoyed reading it.
Craig,
awesome.
I just want to drive home that I'll always be more of a baseball fan. So I'm,
whatever.
You and Matt can have wrestling, and me and you can watch the baseball.
It's funny, this guy's the guy, Sitterson is so trolling sports fans in this book because he constantly, instead of saying wrestling, he says the one true sport. It really helped advance the one true sport. he's really trolling sports fans.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, but it is, one of the longest lasting sports in history.
Yeah.
That's undeniable.
Well, it's also, if you're going to put it in the sports category, it's probably the most profitable, dollar for dollar profitable. It is dirt cheap to put on a wrestling match. And you can have a really bad wrestling company and still make money. And there's been a hell of a lot of them.
Yeah.
You could say there's there's one right now, the big one, the biggest one.
They're sports entertainment is what they are.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you get to throwing around the word sports entertainment, so it's really, most wrestling fans really will tell you that it's gone way too much into entertainment and away from sports because I don't know anybody right now that's really digging what's going on right now in wrestling because they've gotten so into skits and funny characters and these, the wrestlers themselves don't get to express their own creativity like they did in the past. That's the reason, like right now, there's nobody like The Rock in wrestling right now because nobody's allowed to be The Rock right now. If The Rock was wrestling right now, he'd be handed a script and have to go a storyline. He couldn't create his own character out there. And that's what's frustrating to so many people watching wrestling right now is the reason it seems like we're in a lull is because they're making a lull. The people that are, they're running the biggest wrestling company in the world right now is creating the lull themselves. It's like, why aren't you letting these people shine? Why don't you let another Stone Cold Steve Austin happen or Roddy Piper or Macho Man Randy Savage? I mean, these people that'll always be fun to go back and watch on YouTube. They're always entertaining. Is watching them develop part of the characters.
That's been part of the big complaint for the past 20 years in wrestling.
Yeah, that's why I used to watch wrestling. Loved it, man. Back when The Rock was on, man, you couldn't wait for that guy to pick up a microphone, man. Just laugh. Stone Cold Steve Austin was amazing. And there were a lot of other great ones, too. I mean, they were full of great characters. And they're just, now it's just, now when people pick up a mic, you just roll your eyes. You're like, oh, gosh, I got to fast forward through this.
You know, Caleb, there's a lot of times when you kind of forget that Matt's from the South. Until he starts talking about wrestling.
Wrestling.
Yeah.
Well, what about you, Craig? What did you read this week, brother?
Yeah, I'll be kind of quick on mine. I read a book called The Chosen #1. It was a Kickstarter book by Chris Campana, who we've spoken about on this podcast before. He wrote and drew it. It was colored by Dash Martin and the letters by Ed Dukeshire. I have contacted Chris. I haven't heard back from him this morning, but I will definitely get a link to add where you can pick this book up. We'll put that with the show notes somehow. But this book takes the premise of the fantasy genre and kind of turns it on its head, where, what we assume to naturally be the good races, the elves, the humans, the dwarves, so forth. What if all of that's really wrong? What if they decided that, hey, this is my territory. This territory belongs to the orcs, but we want it for us. So let's go run the orcs out. And so this story is really the tale of two sisters. The younger one is the chosen one and heir to the Elven Kingdom. And the older sister, because the younger sister is the chosen one, is just kind of cast out by her parents. So she's wandering the roads and kind of gets taken in by the orcs. And they teach her the orc version of history that, hey, we used to own this land. It was ours. They took it from us just because they wanted it. And so she eventually becomes the orc queen. In the meantime, back in the Elven Kingdom, her sister, Bryn, is a typical teenager. She often ignores her studies. She would rather be out seeking adventure than learning. And on the day that she's supposed to be giving her big speech, her sister leads the orc army into the Elven Kingdom to reclaim their land. And I'm going to kind of leave it at that. It's really a good book. The art is beautiful. If you've ever seen any Chris Campana art, he did Parker, The Adventures of Parker Reef, which I've talked about extensively on the show. Also, with this Kickstarter package, I got 3 volumes of a trade that he did, which was really good as well. And if you go look at my books that I read this week on our Facebook post, you'll see those. Really good story. It's interesting to take this whole philosophy of what's good and what's bad and kind of flip it on its ears, and how it's all just it's a matter of perception sometimes. Maybe the orcs have been raiding all this time because, the murder hobos went in and stole their land.
Murder hobos.
Yeah, that's what parties and Dungeons and Dragons are. I mean, you're a homeless group of people traveling from group to group, and you raid, people's homes and kill them just because they're quote unquote the bad guys.
It's interesting. I read I want to say a paper. It wasn't that quite of a long paper not too long ago that essentially, and it was academically done, but it was essentially saying, like, one of the bad parts about Dungeons and Dragons is this idea that some races are flat out evil, that they are.
It's inherently a racist game, right?
Right, and that's essentially the argument that they were making,
or a specious game, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that's the argument that they were making, and they weren't doing it as in, we have to cancel Dungeons and Dragons and like move past.
No.
This is something to note about this, and as people design games in the future, like that's something to keep in mind.
What you see more and more now is people that will play quote unquote evil races and turn them into good guys. Well, look at one of the biggest characters in Dungeons and Dragons literature is Dritz Duerden, who is a dark elf.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, R.A. Salvatore made him a good guy that rebelled against his race's evil ways, But even still, within that is this inherent concept that a race of people is evil.
Right.
So, yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's a good little book. I mean, I had a lot more broken down here, but I know we're also a little pushed for time this morning. But it was really a lot of fun. It's only issue number 1. And I'm assuming that they're going to release all of their issues through Kickstarter, because that's pretty much how Chris does his books. He's all crowdsourced. So, and I'm assuming at the end of it, there will be a trade paperback for the collected. But yeah, a whole lot of fun. Good book. Chris is a great artist, and I'll continue to support him in any way I can.
Oh, Chris is a great dude. Like I know.
Yeah, he is a good dude. Yeah.
Yeah, toss that guy some scratch. Yeah, send me that link and I'll make sure I get it thrown up on everywhere.
Yeah, I messaged him before the show, and he actually did a small show yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure he's even home yet to, respond. But as soon as I get that information, I'll send it to you.
Nice.
And if not, I'll put it in the comment section of our shared on the our shared podcast link.
Very cool.
So yeah, read it, get it, enjoy it. I promise you will. If you read The Adventures of Parker Reef, it's very much he does fantasy very well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another good fantasy book from him. And again, I like the whole concept of turning shit on its ear once in a while.
If it's going to break my heart like Parker Reef did,
it does not break your heart at this point. But there is a little bit to it that the one sister was the true heir, but got thrown out on her head because she wasn't the quote unquote chosen one.
He's such a good writer. Such a good writer.
He is, and has the art to back it up. So good times.
Well, I read a book this week, speaking of good writers, that actually kind of surprised me. And I had honestly forgotten that I ordered this book. And it's a little graphic novel published by a small company. I don't know if you guys have heard of them or not. Image Comics. They put this book out. It is written by
Image Comics. That sounds familiar.
It's some dudes from the big two who broke off and started their own thing. It's never going to work. Never going to work.
Yeah, it'll never make its way.
Hey, did you hear about how brave Todd McFarlane is for doing that? Did you hear?
I heard that he is, should be our savior.
Well, he's brave. You should know.
Oh, the Todd father. Oh, that like I'm sure I'm missing a reference there.
Hello? I think it comes from his documentary they just did on him. Yeah.
Okay. It comes from any given interview you've seen him do for 20 years. Yeah. You make sure to throw in his bravery.
leaning into the charge. But no, this book that I read this book is called The Last of the Independents, and it's a crime book. Much in there are very similar elements to this that you might expect from a book by somebody like Brubaker and Phillips. It's not as good as that. Like, I'm not making that argument, but you see those same elements there because you're supposed to see them there. And the reason they're supposed to see them there is this book was actually not. I don't think it was ever meant to be. I won't say it wasn't meant to be published, but it was never on the front burner of things that the writer was going to get published. And that's because the writer is Matt Fraction and the artist on this book is Kieran Dwyer. And when I say that, this book was more so of an exercise. This book was written. It was actually the first quote unquote graphic novel that Matt Fraction ever wrote way back in 2001. And he wrote it because he wanted to expand his catalog. He wanted to expand his resume of what he could write and his writing styles, but he wrote it. It got shipped around a little bit. It wasn't necessarily his proudest thing that he had, so he kind of put it on the back burner. Eventually, Kieran Dwyer got to a spot in his career and in his schedule where he could draw it, and so he got it drawn. But it's just now being published. So that should tell you it wasn't necessarily the most pressing thing for either of those figures. Nonetheless, it's a good story and it's a really good book. It wears its influences on its sleeves. It's not trying to be anything that it's not trying to be. But it does some neat things. It does break some of the classic expectations of a crime story. And in a really, really good introduction, the one and only Patton Oswalt actually speaks on those matters, because Patton's also a big fan of crime and 70s Hollywood films. Anything with Walter Matthau in it, he's going to love. And so he kind of talks about that a little bit in the introduction before the story. Now, the story itself, again, kind of a classic trope, bank robbery, gone right, maybe gone wrong, maybe depends on your perspective of it. These little cast of people, they are going to rob this bank, and in fact they do rob the bank, but they walk away with more than what they intended. And part of the reason for that is because this bank was laundering money for the mafia. So, get away free and clear with the money from the bank. But what they didn't realize is that it has ties to some of the worst people you can imagine who really, really want their money back. Like we've read this story. Yeah, we've read this story before, right? Like it's nothing conceptually new. The main characters in the story are, there's an older gentleman and a younger woman. Like she's kind of got herself a silver fox, and they are the brain trust behind this event. And then there's another figure who's a younger guy, kind of a just corn-fed dude, just a big dude who's a little bit simple, kind of a Steinbeckian character. And he's not necessarily the most streetwise of people, but he's incredibly good at fixing things. He follows orders really well, and he is a genuinely nice person that robs banks, like you do. So this little motley crew of folks, they walk out with just 3 massive bags of cash. They do make their getaway. Part of them making their getaway is to jump into a crop duster, an airplane that the young woman pilots. That's how she comes into the picture to make their getaway. And they think that they're free and clear. Like I said, they think they're done. They're going to be able to buy new identities, and they're going to be able to start new lives, and they're all going to have their money, and it's going to be great. But that's not quite the way it works out, because the mob who is behind this, they have means, they have ways of figuring things out, including tracking down the airplane that they flew away in. So they track them down, and where they come to is this group's hideout, which is interesting because it's not a cabin in the woods. It's not a rendezvous point that's inconspicuous. Their hideout is actually it is an abandoned carnival. It's an abandoned theme park that they are hiding at, that they've actually bought. And that was one of the reasons they needed to rob the bank, was to pay for it. That they have turned into they're going to fix it up. That was the whole purpose, is that they were going to restart. They were going to get new lives, and they were going to open up a theme park together. And in order to protect their investment, they have had the simple guy, the one who's a little, he's not, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. He is not stupid. He's just smart in unconventional ways. They tasked him with hiding the money in the theme park. Part of him hiding the money in the theme park was he also planted landmines all around the theme park where everything was. And so as the mafia guys start to, they track them down and they try to break into the theme park, mafia guys just start blowing up left and right. And they're able to kind of make a last stand. They're able to hold the mob off for a while. But as all things are wont to do, you can't stay there forever. They've got a target on their back. And long story short, the mafia finds their way in. But it's not, these people are not without their own sense of danger. They are not individuals who are going to take anything lying down. They put up one hell of a fight. And in the end, not everybody walks out of it. Most of them do, but you get a little bit of the backstory about how this cast of people came together. You really get an emotional investment in these characters in a very short period of time, which I think was really well done. There are some really great scenes. Like there are no traditional getaways in this. Sometimes they're on horses, and it's like an old Western scene, very reminiscent to Pulp that we just read. Sometimes they're, like I said, flying away on airplanes. Sometime in the midst of shootouts, they just go full Rambo. You get a lot of, I think Patton Oswalt was right. You get a lot of 1970s bravado and gunslinging in this. That was just fun. It's not, this book is not going to, quote unquote, win any awards. It's not breaking the mold of adventure stories. It really is. You can tell it's a little bit dated. It's a little bit very early 2000s. You can actually, if you want to trace back the careers and the roots of folks like Kieran Dwyer and Matt Fraction, you can see a lot of their ideas that maybe were born out of doing the story that they took to other places and made better stories out of. But like when you think about the lineage of those two figures' careers, it's still neat and it's fun to trace those roots back to see this early work. I enjoyed it a lot. Like a lot of Kieran Dwyer's work, it's monocolor. This book it's not a black and white book. It's different shades of beige, almost an orangey beige, to make it look like it's drawn on browned parchment. And he uses that to his advantage. If you look at I'm trying to think of, if you've never seen Kieran Dwyer's work before, if you look at some of the stills, it's not, I almost want to draw a direct line to things like, you know who it reminds me of? It's Eduardo Riso. That's who it reminds me of. He's got a Riso line. He doesn't have Riso shading by any means, but the line is there. And there's a lot of that, the artwork that's in a similar vein. So, I picked this book up. It's a little over 100 pages. It's not a thick book. It's a little bit of an expensive book. Like that, MSRP is $18, but if you've got a decent comic store, or you can buy it off one of the discount sites online, you're going to get it for less than that, and it's not going to hurt the wallet too bad. And it's a thicker book. It's a hardcover. It's actually drawn in a widescreen format. So that was nice. Like it's wider than it is tall. So it gives a book more of a cinematic feel to it, almost like you're looking at the what do they call it when they draw, like when an artist draws stills or things to plot out a film. It's almost like you're looking at one of those
storyboards.
Yeah, storyboards. Sorry, my brain escaped me.
No.
But it's just it's fun times. The back of it, the pictures on the back is very it's very reminiscent of what you might expect from a mafioso story. Like the book actually pokes fun at just how ridiculous mafia stories became, or at least like mainstream mafia stories, how almost like exploitive they became. Some of the art does that. It's a fun time. It blends crime, mystery, gangster stuff, westerns. And it was a really fun adventure. Like I said, it's not going to be on my end of the year best of list, but I enjoyed sitting down and just reading this for a while. It was enjoyable. And at the end of the day, if you're looking for escapism, if you like mob movies, if you like crime books, I think you're going to find something that you have a lot of fun with in this book. So go check it out if you can find it. If either anybody wants to borrow it, let me know. I'll be happy to send it out.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when you're reading, all you're looking for is a little escapism most of the time anyways, right?
Yeah. And
it's Matt Fraction, so I'm sure it's very entertaining.
It really was. And like I said, not, I'm not trying to shit on the book, because I really think everybody should go out and read it, but it's not the best Matt Fraction ever. It's not the best.
I mean, I get it.
Yeah. But that doesn't diminish its it doesn't diminish its value in terms of what you're getting out of it, even if it's not the best. Like it's not binary in the sense that if I don't love it, I hate it.
Well, things can be in the middle of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is there.
But I read a lot of good stuff that doesn't necessarily mean it's at the top of my list of things I love, but it doesn't mean that I dislike it either. And,
for sure.
Yeah.
What I thought was hilarious about this, one of my favorite things is how much it actually like pokes fun at Quentin Tarantino. Like, it's not blatant. It doesn't come out and say, ha ha, fuck you, Quentin Tarantino. But there are little lines in this, and there's little parts of the plot and little like tidbits of ridiculousness that you can tell that they are really, poking fun. Not in a diminutive way, but they're laughing in a sense of what Quentin Tarantino has done to the crime, quote unquote, crime genre, which was neat. It's like you can't help but just kind of chuckle at that. They're very tongue in cheek about it. So
that's awesome, man. Chris just messaged me and gave me the link, so I'll send that to you when we're done.
Oh, fantastic. Well, while you're doing that and we're in the midst of that, I want to invite everybody, every single body, all y'all who are listening to this podcast and whatever way you're listening to it, to come and join us on our Facebook group. we're 2/3 of us are there on a regular basis. Matt shuns the Facebook, and I don't blame him for that because it's a terrible place. It's a hive of scum and villainy, except for our little corner of it, which is amazing. You should come join us there. If you want to see stills, clippings, images, if you will, of what we are reading, what we're enjoying, art that we are appreciating, you can follow us on Instagram and even Twitter. We have a Twitter page. We're at SFG on both of those. If there are things that you maybe think we missed, if you enjoyed DC Fandome and you've got alternative opinions to what it was, or if we glossed over something that you think is worth noting, and you don't want to just put us on blast on because you're a nice person, right? You can fire off an email to us at southernfriedgeekery@gmail.com, and we'll take your comments and concerns there. We love to hear from y'all. We're not just blowing smoke when we say that. The interaction, the building of the community is absolutely what we do this for. We love it.
Yeah, I mean, I love talking to you guys on Facebook for sure. And, any other way you want to get a hold of us, holler at us.
It's the good times. You know what else is good times?
What's that?
New comic book days.
Oh, yeah?
Uh-huh.
I don't know. You don't come in on Wednesdays anymore. We've replaced you with the new sassy gay man.
I appreciate that. I had to get a big boy job. They don't let me off in the middle of the day anymore, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
I hear you, man. I hear you.
It's diminished.
The work's getting in the way.
It's diminished my Wednesdays. I'm not a fan. But what I am a fan of is bringing home new things to read, which we get to do every week. It's fun times, especially now that the industry is kicking back into gear. So I am curious, and we'll kind of go in the order of the way in which we talked about our books, because that makes it simple and easy. Matt, what are you grabbing this next week?
So me, along with everybody else with good taste, I can only assume, is going to pick up from Dynamite, Mars Attacks Red Sonja, from John Layman and Fran Strukin. Mars attacks, the Martians invade the Hyborian Age, and how is Red Sonja going to respond? I'm going to make a not so bold prediction and say with aggression. And can't cancel the Eisners right now because this one clearly is going to sweep.
Yeah, no doubt. I am excited for that book. I forgot that Layman was writing that one. So,
how dare you? Well, it's a good thing I'm here.
I signed up for it because Layman was on it, but I kind of forgot about it. So I'm going to pick Batman 3 Jokers by Jeff Johns and Jason Fabok, DC Comics, of course. This is, quote unquote, the ultimate story of Batman and the Joker. I find that a little maybe hard to believe, but
think they might be overselling that a bit.
They might be overselling that just a bit. So we finally get to find out why there are 3 Jokers and what that means for Batman and Gotham. It's also, quote unquote, a mystery unlike any Batman has ever faced.
I thought I was the one who was prone to hyperbole.
No, apparently DC is when they're trying to sell this book. Especially since Batman's known about this for going on 5 years now.
Is this being done, you may have already said this, but is this one of the Black Label books?
It is Black Label.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, but it's going back to what happened in New 52 with when Batman was, exactly. So, guess we finally get to figure out what Jeff Johns had in mind way back then.
We'll see.
Yes, we will.
Hey, it's the ultimate Batman story of the ultimate Batman Joker story. And it's unlike any Batman story you've ever read.
Now that part, I'm betting is accurate.
I'm actually curious about the book. They're just from a weirdness standpoint. Let's see what they do. So I am grabbing this as well. I'm going to pick it up.
I am grabbing it. Yeah.
My pick of the week is actually a shout out to Jerry for putting this title on my radar. So Jerry used to co-host our show and now is off doing amazing things out in the world, living up in Seattle, being rad. there was a book that Jerry fell in love with. I want to say like a year and a half, 2 years ago, and that book was called Canto. Well, Canto ended, but the story didn't end there. Canto number 2, I guess volume 2 starts this next week. It's called The Hollow Men. It's an all ages story, which so is Canto, and it's going to be fun. Canto, the first book, was really exciting. Like I said, it's an all ages story, so some of it is written. It's not all ages in the sense of, oh, you have to be a child to enjoy this. It really is written in the sense of, oh no, literally anybody of any age can like this. It's going to be fun. Canto was once not in the best place. He's got a clock for a heart, and he breaks all the rules. And so his freedom in this second story is going to be in jeopardy when he discovers that everybody's clocks are going to start. Everybody's like, they're all just going to kind of, that's a metaphor for death, wink, wink, nod, nod, if you weren't picking that up. Unless they return to the captivity from which they were once held, which puts them in a really hard place. So he and Falco and Ricta and Veretta, they're all going to go on this new little adventure, and they're going to save the day because that's what happens because he's Canto. This is written by David Boer, and it's drawn by Drew Zucker. It's a really cute little story. So excited to see where this next chapter goes. And it's published by IDW, who I personally enjoy a lot. So go check it out, pick it up, order it, put it in your carts. Well, gentlemen,
put it in your carts.
Mm-hmm. Put 2 of them in your carts. Just throw all of them in.
Hey, you're only allowed to buy 1 because of the comic book shortage.
So they say. So, all right, guys, what else do we got? We got anything we need to add? Have we missed anything? Did I leave anything out?
Nah, I think you get it.
Well, all right. Well, if nothing further, do all those things we just said to do. See how I just wrapped it up into one neat little package? That's because I'm talented like that. And while you're doing that, you should go forth and love some comics.
Woo!